We're gathered here today as family members, as friends, as neighbors, as fans of a very dear, wonderful, special, incredible type of man. We're here to say thank you. We're here to say I love you and I appreciate all you've done for us. To our most beloved Andrew, Andy, G, Simon. There are so many feelings in the room. There's so many things to say. There's so many people who came today that it's really an amazing tribute to him. And I think we could just stand up here and sing nothing, but the room itself speaks the whole story of what a great man he was and what difference he made to everyone's lives. But we're here to come together to make what we had with him, to bring us together in unity. We're here to share all the stories, to not only remember him, but to build ourselves up, to remind ourselves what you could do, how special you could be, how courageous you could be, how strong you could be, how loving and fun and amazing in the midst of many circumstances. We're going to try to respond to our sadness and our bitterness and our missing him by saying to him and his family that we're going to try to be like him. We're going to grow like him. We're going to try to be like him in so many different ways. We're going to spread his light and his love to the world and finish all the little projects he couldn't finish. All the things he wanted to do, maybe we'll help to finish and do even more. So we're allowed to cry today, we're allowed to be sad, but we'll also smile and tell jokes and be happy and smile for all the good. Just like life, it's all a mixture, all together, a big cholent of things, right? And that is how life is. We can focus on the sad, we can focus on the happy. We'll go up and down, but as we do, it's still the same thought, that we had the holiness and the specialness of a great man. And this great man was so great that he brought us to his family, who's also very great and very special. And his friends brought us to each other. Each of us, we shared each other as friends through his greatness. We're going to start with a selection from the Psalms. We're going to read Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo iksar, b'nai steshach yarbitzeni, al mei menuchos yanachaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek l'man shemo. Gam ki elech begeitz al-maves, lo yirara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Tairach lefanai shulchan neged tsarirai. Dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi ravaya. Achtov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei hayai. V'chshavti b'beis Adonai le'arech yamim. A Psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down. Beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul. He leads me on paths of justice for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley, overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in view of my torments. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and mercy pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long days. We read another psalm. We read from Psalm 130. Shir hamalos mimamakim karasicha Adonai. Adonai shema v'koli tienaznacha kashuvos lekol tachanunai. Im avonos tishmarya Adonai miyamod. Ki imcha haslicha leman tiverei. Kivise Adonai kivise nafshi v'lid varo hochalti. Nafshi l'Adonai meshamrim laboker shamrim laboker. Yachel Yisrael el Adonai. Ki im Adonai chesed v'harbei imo fedus. Behu yifdeis Yisrael mikol avonimsav. A song of ascent. From the depths I called you, O Lord. My Lord, hear my voice. May your ears be attentive to the sound of my pleas. If you preserve our mistakes, O Lord, who could survive? For with you is forgiveness, that you may be feared. I put confidence in God. My soul puts confidence, and I hope for his word. I yearn for my Lord among those longing for the dawn, those longing for the dawn. Let Israel hope for God, for with God is kindness, and with him is abundant redemption. And he shall redeem Israel from all of their difficulties. I will attempt to share with you a few words about the amazing life of Andy Simon. But much like the Superman comics, you can't cover it all in one issue. And you have many, many years of material. So at best, this is just an opener to a series that will have to be continued by you guys and your special abilities. So here goes. And these are just a collection of stories that we probably all heard, but they're all very special. And stories that if the family could be up here, they would have told you themselves. But understandably, it's not easy to do that for them at this moment. So we think of these memories, and we think of the soul and the neshama, the eternal memory of Avram Gershon ben Masha and Leib Hirsch, his Hebrew name. So Andy grew up, or he was born April 3rd, 1964, at Mount Sinai Hospital, to Larry and Marcia Simon. He had 2 great brothers, and he grew up in South Euclid. The famous joke in his family was that his parents already had the ABC boys, which, with it really being in reverse, though, because of course it was C, B, A, with Andy being the last one. And what's the letter D for? The letter D was for done, right? But of course, it's only a joke. We're here to salute Andy's greatness. And really, it was just a joke because Andy was a delight. You know, Andy was the most wonderful child and son to his parents. And if they were done, they were done. But it wasn't because of the A in the alphabet. So he attended Roland Elementary School in South Euclid. And normally we don't cite people's elementary schools. You know, maybe they're high schools, maybe they're colleges. But we mentioned Roland Elementary because that was an important detail in his life, because that's where his daughter became a teacher, and that he was so proud that he had a daughter who was a teacher in the very same elementary school that he attended. As a kid, I guess they say he was more shy, but he acquired a lot of close friends. And one of the themes in his life that started when he was real little was that when he had a friend forever. So many of the friends he acquired on the street growing up as a little kid, many of his friends he acquired in later years. And almost all of you are still here today as lifelong friends. What a blessing for you, and what a blessing for him. He graduated from Bush High School in 1982, and he went on to spend 2 years at Kent State. His goal was to become a photojournalist. And at that time, he had a very amazing situation. He could combine his 2 loves in life. He loved sports, and he loved photography. So being a photojournalist, covering the Kent State sports events, to him was very amazing. It was a dream come true. But the truth is, to him, to Andy, as much as he loved sports, he loves photography, there was something much more important, and that was his duty to his family. And so at that time, in his second year at Kent State, the duty to his family business called, and it was time to leave Kent and go to Simon Foods and help out in the family business. And that's what he did. He did so very happily and very proudly, even though he left behind something that he really dreamt of doing in a different way. So to be part of Simon Foods meant for him that you're part of a rich family tradition of kosher food purveyance. It started with his grandparents and then to his parents. And what did it mean? It meant you made Jewish food all by yourself, right? You rolled your sleeves up and you got into the oil, into the vinegar, into the wine, and you made the herring, right? And can you imagine with all that herring on your fingers how you would smell at the end of the day? And if that wasn't enough, you had to dip your fingers into pickle barrels, right? And who knows how long those stayed with you. And if you weren't done with smelling really good and smelling very Jewish, it was time to grind the horseradish, which of course didn't forget about you after many times. And it certainly wasn't the easiest job, right? It wasn't those jobs where you could show up in the office at 10 a.m. because you worked for your father, right? It meant showing up at 5 a.m. and working really, really hard throughout the day to make sure it all happened. And Andy was the type of person that he truly served his customers. You know, they weren't there for him. He was there for them. And so he was truly good to his customers, wherever they were, whether they were a butcher in Akron, whether they were a Jewish deli, whether they were a Jewish kosher restaurant, whatever the case may be, he was always for them. No matter what they needed, he made sure that he took care of them. He wasn't tired traveling from Youngstown to Akron to Canton, all over Cleveland. He just loved having friends who worked with you in business. It was the greatest combination of working for people, doing business with people, but meeting the most beautiful people and enjoying the people of your life every single moment. In fact, this idea of the Jewish kosher food was so much part of his identity that when it came time to give a gift to his new son-in-law, what did he send him? He didn't give him a wristwatch, you know. He didn't give him a nice belt. He sent him a 10-pound salami, right? That really says it all. Welcome to the family. Have a salami. Right, and I guess Marissa, maybe she had a craving or she was a little hungry. She asked for a few pickles, and she didn't just get a jar of pickles. She got a fridge full of pickles, you know, and sometimes, you know, different ways of showing your love, and he knew all of them. So his devotion to his family business was extraordinary, so much so that in 2015, the night that he received his diagnosis, and he was sitting in a bed in the emergency room, having all kinds of things that changed in his life, what did he have to do? He had to place a call to Empire Chicken to make sure that the kosher chicken order went through so his customer wouldn't miss his order. He didn't love, fortunately, just to make and sell these Jewish foods. He, of course, loved to eat them himself. Right? Can you imagine making all these foods all day long and not wanting to eat them? Right? That was no problem because he was a big fan. He loved his milchigs. He loved his dairy foods. He loved his smoked whitefish. He loved a good lox and a good bagel. And I'm sure he knew how to serve it just perfectly. So it was just right. And of course, he loved knishes. And he loved something which I must admit I never heard of before. He loved something called mishmash soup. Right? And I guess mishmash soup was for a Jewish person who couldn't decide what you liked. Right? Do you like lakshan or do you like kreplach? Do you like noodles or do you like the stuffed triangular things? Why not? Just have it all. Have a mishmash soup. Right? But as time went on, he was working so hard in the business. He was starting to, realize that his diagnosis and his health wasn't so simple. He had to change a little bit. He had to change his life. He had to go away from being a super busy business person and allow a transition to happen. And that was one of the very difficult things for him in his life, was giving up his key role in the business. But he did everything he could so that he could balance it all out, to have the business be successful, and to, of course, have the time with his family that was so, so precious to him. And it was no secret that for Andy, the most important thing for him was his family. He was a family man in every single sense of the word. So Andy married Barb in 1989, who I'm fortunate to know as a Menorah Park social worker. And together they raised two beautiful children, Alec and Marissa. They both tried very hard to make things work. They were good friends in many ways, good partners in many ways. But it wasn't meant to be, and they had to separate in 2007. And then later, Amy and Andy found each other, and they realized that they had so many similarities that they really were a match made in heaven. Anyone who knows them, that one of the key matches is they both love to shop. Right? Can you imagine the luck that Amy had? Your average husband does not like to shop. He doesn't like to pull out his credit card. But Amy could take him anywhere, and they would both like to shop and look for the latest things. And they also taught me a new Yiddish word, which is, the word is shemayin. I never heard this word before, but the word apparently means just moseying around town, just not having like a strong goal, but just taking your time, just enjoying where you go, browsing, kibitzing, and they both had the same speed of their kibitzing and their browsing and their schmoozing, and it worked out so well. And they just really enjoyed the time they had shemayin together around town. So I'm told that Andy in his earlier years, was a real fashionista. I don't know what you call a male fashionista, but whatever it was, he was such a person. And it's not every single day that you compare the size of the closet of the wife to the size of the closet of the husband. And guess what? Andy had more closet space. So I'm told also he followed all of the latest trends, but he was also kind of independent too. He had his own style, he had his own way, but he also liked to be fashionable as well. But some of the other connections that they had were they both loved cars. And, his love of cars brought him to a lot of different people, all kinds of meets, all kinds of gatherings. And, it's not everybody who can find a spouse who can sit by a Mustang or a Corvette, or I don't know what he drove, and sit there for hours and schmooze about how much horsepower and what accessories you've added to it. Not everybody can pull that off together. So in that sense, it's a beautiful match that Amy and Andy took care of each other so beautifully. But they shared many other connections too. Their kids were actually connected before they were kind of connected. That Brooke and Marissa were in school together. And Brooke, I'm told, knew Austin before even Marissa knew Austin. And Alec and Jordan were even in the same grade in maybe the same school. So pretty cool connection to what would come later in time. And Andy's courtship was, I guess, a very typical Andy. So Andy obviously liked Amy quite a bit. And he found out that she needed some help around the house, that she'd been going through a lot of stuff. Maybe her grass was getting a little long, and there were a few weeds in the front. I don't want to make up stories, but he did notice something was a little bit different. So one day he showed up in his gardener hat, showed up with some tools, and he didn't say, "Oh, this is Andy. You want to have a drink? You want to do something together?" He says, "I'm your gardener," right? He used kind of a joke to express himself, what kind of gardener he was. He said, "I'm your gardener. I'm here to pull out some weeds," and he took it from there. And maybe if it didn't take off during the summer or spring, the winter came, and he suddenly became a snowplow driver as well. Pretty cool. So, but the way that he impressed the family, he impressed Amy, was the fact that he was a really dedicated father, and he was a dedicated family man. And that was the most important thing to them and to everybody. The fact that he was the most attentive, the most caring, the most involved parent that one could ever ask for. He worked so hard during the day, but he was always there no matter what his family needed, anytime, in any situations. And he was a real hands-on dad. He liked to be the one really doing things, not just talking about it. He was the one there to coach the teams. He was the one picking up, driving, things like that. As much as he could do, he would always do as much as he could. As we all know, Andy's diagnosis, his brain cancer, was something that was both the biggest challenge in his life, but also his greatest triumph. Right? And sometimes that is how it's in his life. The hardest things for us are the most valuable, because they're the things that bring out our greatness. They bring out our strength. And in fact, in Hebrew, the word nisayon, which means challenge, it not only means challenge, something you have to overcome, but it also means flag or banner. Because when you overcome that challenge, it's very difficult, it's very challenging, but it shows greatness that you could not have shown any other way. And that truly was Andy's story. We didn't ask for this, he didn't want this, but this terrible situation brought out the greatness in his friends, his family, and certainly himself. And it showed the world so many special things that we would not have seen otherwise. So going back more than 15 years ago, he had been treated for migraines, but we didn't understand, they didn't know, but the treatments didn't really work, unfortunately. And the doctors soon realized that it was something much more serious than migraines. And in fact, it was an actual mass that he had in his brain. And so in November 2015, after significant pain and something happening, he had to have an emergency craniotomy, an emergency brain surgery, which was a huge deal. And I guess the doctors and the family figured it would take so long to recover. It would be very difficult to find his balance again after that. But sure did he surprise everybody, right? He rushed the rehab faster than anyone else ever had. He came home, and literally days after arriving home, instead of sitting in his bed and putting his feet up, he told his family, I need to get to Jack's Deli and get some mishmash soup. So I'm sure the neighbors almost fell off their chairs. They couldn't believe it. But when they saw Andy walking down the streets towards Jack's Deli to get his favorite soup, like it was nothing ever happened, it was pretty amazing, And that was the beginning of the Superman legend that is about to unfold, which Alec will share much more about. But if I may just say, just one quick thing, is that where did he get this Superman title? He certainly earned it, but one day, after all of this, after going to Jack's Deli, after, surprising his family, he said, I got to go to work. And he showed up suddenly at 4:30 in the morning at work. All the coworkers were like, what is this guy doing here? I can't believe it. He was carrying heavy boxes, and one of his coworkers said to him, what do you think you are, sir? You think you must be Superman? Right? And after that, the title stuck, and the rest was history. The doctor said, after later on, that it was good news that they could remove the mass. It was a glioblastoma, a GBM. But it was difficult, because if you were too much into the science, you were too much into the medicine, you knew that it was a very, very difficult thing. The odds were very difficult to overcome. But what did Andy say? Andy said to his family, he said, don't be scared. We are going to kick its, I'll let you finish that word, 3 letters, begins with A. Okay? That's what he said, right? And what was his secret? How did he do it? He was very courageous. He was very strong. But he had a certain innocence. He had a certain idea that okay, the doctors know a lot. This is a very serious disease. But I don't have to live in their reality, right? I don't have to buy it all, right? I can live in my understanding, my sort of simpler understanding of it, and that'll be fine. And that's how he was able to overcome. He knew what he had to do, but he didn't take it too hard. He didn't listen to everything the doctor said. He didn't let the disease own him. He let him own the disease. And that was the secret of his success. And that's what he did. He just kept on plugging and plugging and plugging. Then unfortunately his cells got a little bit extra energy than they had before. And ultimately they made it very difficult. And the chemo didn't work anymore, and the radiation didn't work anymore. And it was much, much harder. But he gave it his all in every sense. But how do you look at it? What perspective do we look at it? His family were able to clarify with unbelievable clarity. And they said that even though all these things happened, even though these incredible odds were against him, what did he have? He was able to have 9 incredible years. 9 incredible years of beating the cancer and overcoming something that was out to get him from day one. In those 9 years, he was able to see 3 kids get married. He was able to see 5 children be born, grandchildren be born, right? He was able to run a 5K cancer race, even before he had completed his 3 cycles of treatments. He was able to do a lot more things than anyone ever expected him to because of his own tenacity, his faith, his trust in God, but mainly also because of his family. He had a tremendous support system behind him. Whether it was his brothers, whether it was his kids, his grandkids, and most notably, whether it was Amy. You guys really helped him to defeat the odds and do the impossible. And so whether it was everyone cheering him on and encouraging him, talking about the Superman thing, or whether it was Amy pushing him that he had to eat better, and with his liking for Jewish food, I'm sure it was not an easy battle to get him to eat healthy and to have a healthier lifestyle. But it sure worked. The healthy lifestyle, the looking and living differently, was another secret sauce that he added to the most amazing blend that he had towards his life. And you guys, his family and friends, you sure did it because your advocacy, your support, your love, and just being his fans sure did the trick. And I think that many people are strong, but you can't be strong without fans. Many people are internally strong, but you need people to cheer you on. You need people to remind you what you're doing. You need people to encourage you. And he was an incredible superhero, and he had incredible fans. And you can't ask for a better combination than that. So yes, maybe his sarcasm, his humor wasn't always funny, right? Sometimes, he would look at people after telling a joke, and they wouldn't really get the joke. And he would say, no, that was sarcasm. You're supposed to laugh. So that's how it was for him. So it's hard to know where to end it, because the way I look at it is his story is not a story that really ends. Yes, he's not with us anymore in a bodily way, but he's with us in the most strong way with his spirit, with his energy, and with his love. And his greatness is in his children, in his wife, and all of you. And you don't have to go looking hard for it. It's inside of you. Just don't forget it. Keep working it. Keep pushing it. And you'll be able to bring more of Andy into the world and make his memory even more so for a blessing. So I'm glad it was an honor for me to share some of the words of the family. But the most sweet words are the words that his own family would like to share with you. And I don't know how his son Alec found the strength, but he's able to find the strength today to share a few words on behalf of his father for you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to begin by thanking the countless doctors, nurses, aides, and other caregivers that have taken such great care of my dad over the last 9 years. It's because of you that he was able to live long enough to experience so much more of life and gift us so many more memories than he ever would have otherwise been able. So from our family, thank you. I also want to thank you all for being here today. I know it would have meant the world to him to see so many people here remembering him and supporting our family. I think it's beautiful and poetic that Superman was filming in Cleveland during the last several weeks of my dad's life. The rabbi talked about it a little bit, but for those of you who don't know, the Superman backstory, my dad was diagnosed with cancer almost 9 years ago. He had an almost 10-hour-long brain surgery to remove the tumor, and 10 days later he was back at work. On his first day back, one of his coworkers called him Superman, and the moniker just stuck. He took on the role of Superman and truly embodied Superman as he went through his treatments, inspiring so many others along the way with his fight, his strength, his tenacity, and his courage. To so many people, he really was Superman. But to my sister and I, our dad's cancer diagnosis and his fight didn't turn him into Superman. To us, he was already our hero. He was a best friend, a role model, and the greatest dad a kid could ask for. He's always been our superhero. He was, without a doubt, the hardest working person I'll ever know. He worked for many years at the family business in an extremely physically demanding job. He'd get up and leave for work by 5:30 every morning and spend all day on his feet, lifting heavy cases of cheese, jars of gefilte fish, barrels of pickles, and so much more. But somehow, some way, he'd come home from work, always there for my sister and I. Seemingly every afternoon we'd play catch, or we'd shoot hoops, or we'd throw a football, or we'd hit tennis balls. I really can't remember a day growing up where he wouldn't be home, ready to play, after he had made sure we had done our homework. So he worked this physically demanding job, but never once do I ever remember him complaining or saying he was tired. It's just who he was and what he did. As a dad of 2 toddlers now who really, I just sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, I really don't know how he managed to do it. I have thousands of memories of my dad that I think I could probably share today. I could talk about his love of being a part-time firefighter and a volunteer firefighter and part of the CERT team. I could talk about his love of old cars, which skipped my generation, although I do have his car pin tie on. His love of shopping I just don't have. And I never have understood his fashion sense. I don't get it. but to each their own. He had a great love of photography and going to restaurants. He was incredibly creative. He made all of our bar mitzvah decorations. But in thinking about what I wanted to share personally, I realized that so many of my memories with him involved sports. I think that's what we really bonded over in a lot of ways. I remember countless nights as a kid laying in bed together, falling asleep, listening to Tom Hamilton on the radio. I remember trips to the batting cages together where he'd watch me, encouragingly, as I'd swing and miss over and over again. I remember sitting in his condo cheering as we watched the Midge game in 2007, or Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, or Michael Phelps at the 2008 Olympics, and so much more. I remember he used to play doubles every Sunday morning, and I'd go there and I'd just watch. And I remember being so excited when he let me play for the first time. I also remember when we lost and he threw his racket and smashed it to pieces, so tried not to lose again. I remember him coaching many of my teams and legitimately not caring if we won or lost, but rather if we were giving it our all. He was really always about working hard. Unfortunately, I also remember getting yelled at when I didn't give the effort he thought I should have given, and well, I would love to share with you a bit of what he said. I will also use the rabbi's discretion and not share some of that language. But I remember traveling to countless lessons and games and tournaments and more, and the memories of those trips, they're large and small, are the ones I'll never forget. The rabbi talked about it a little bit, but I think I'm a little skeptical that my dad ever actually liked sports that much. To my core, I think that he liked them, but I think they were his way of finding something we could bond over and do together. And I'll always be appreciative for that. And I don't think I appreciated it nearly enough at the time, but my dad was incredibly involved in my life. And I was really lucky that he was able to come to almost every game I ever played. I also remember talking to him after my last tennis match in high school. I just lost. I was pretty disappointed, but I'll never forget what he said. He said he was so proud of how hard I had worked, and he actually thanked me for letting him come along on the journey with him. So that's pretty special. And I think it's my turn to turn a little bit of that sentiment around. Dad gave life everything it had. He was the hardest, bravest worker that I'll ever know, and we are all so very proud of you. And more than that, we are thankful that you've allowed us to be part of your journey all these years. There are people in the room today that have been on this journey with him much longer than I have, but I've been fortunate to be part of the journey for the last 33 years, including the last several when I got to be there to see his absolute joy as he moved from being dad to being papa. I'll never forget the night Skylar, my oldest, was born, and calling my dad and hearing the tears in his voice as I told him he had a grandson and was officially a papa. And I was looking through it, and I found a text he sent me that night, and it said, "Thanks for the great wallpaper and background for my phone." So I must have sent him a picture. But he said, "I tear up every look. Have a great night. Love you all. Obviously, you know, I wish I could be there with you guys." He loved being a papa, and I've spent a lot of time in the last several days reflecting on pictures and memories of my dad. And it's the memory of him with his grandkids that have brought me more sadness than I could have imagined, but more happiness and joy than I also could have imagined. And while his physical journey is over, he'll always be part of our journey, in the journey of his grandkids, through the countless lessons and legitimately thousands of memories that we'll cherish and pass on. We'll make sure our children know who their papa was. We'll make sure they know he was a great person, a fantastic father, a loving papa, and our personal superhero. And as my sister wrote the other day, we'll promise to always tell his grandkids the story of their papa, our real-life Superman. We love you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your beautiful words. Following services today, we're going to go in procession to Zion Memorial Cemetery, to Mount Olive Cemetery in Solon. And following the burial at Mount Olive, we are going to be going to the Point East Community Room, which is at 27500 Cedar Road. And the family will be sitting there receiving visitors until 8 p.m. today only for the Shiva. If friends would like to contribute, they can do so to the Seidman Cancer Center, care of the University Hospital of Cleveland, or the Glioblastoma Foundation as well. At this moment, please, what we're going to do is we're going to rise and we're going to say the memorial prayer. And then following the memorial prayer, we're going to have the pallbearers come forward. And what's going to happen is the pallbearers are going to escort the casket out the side door over here. The family will follow behind the casket, and then behind the family will file in all the other members of the room here and escort and fulfill the Jewish mitzvah of accompanying the deceased, which indeed is a very special and honorable mitzvah. And in regard to the mitzvah of honoring the deceased, I also want to give acknowledgement and thanks to the CERT team for being his honor guard, and the leader as well for giving him this beautiful final honor that he so deserved. El mali rachamim sheichein bamrumim hamse menucha nechayin al kanfei hashchina b'malois kedoshim utahirim kezarakia mazhim es nishmas Avraham Gershon ben Masha Leib Hirsch Shahalach Leilamo Bavor Shanachtu Mispalim Haskaras Nishmaso Began Eden Tehe Menuchaso Lechein Bal Harachamim Yasti Reichu B'Seisa Kanafav Leolamim B'Yitzor B'Tzor Chaim Es Nishmaso Adonai Hu Nachlaso V'Yanoch Al Mishkavo B'Shalom V'Nomar Amen. O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and the pure ones who shine like the glow of the firmament, for the soul of our most beloved Andy Simon, Avram Gershon, the son of Masha and Leib Hirsch, and who has gone into his world, and for whom we pray. May his resting place be in the Garden of Eden, and may the Master of Mercy, may God shelter him in the shelter of his wings for all eternity, and may God bind his soul in the bonds of eternal life. God is his heritage, and may he repose in peace on his resting place. And we say together, Amen. So we remain standing. If people could just grab their things, and we can have the pallbearers please come forward.
Turn on your headlights and your flashers. Respect